I'm Steve McPherson and I'm an artist who mainly uses objects found on the beach and really mainly plastics, all collected from the Thanet coast, and I was born and raised in the area and I still work and show internationally. So I've been collecting plastic on the beaches for over 30 years, and the range of plastics now is quite different from when I first started collecting. When I first started collecting, you would find bits of hard plastics, lots of bits of cars and things like that, and cars that had met quite often, as a teenager, cars and motorbikes would be dumped on the beaches around here. And so they would just like disintegrate, the council wouldn't move them, and bits of them would fall off and obviously just be in the sea for many years. So you'd pick up pieces like that, and also sometimes Second World War gas masks and objects which had been in the sea for 70 odd years. More recently, you're finding a lot more kind of technologically based objects, so pieces of phones, now lots of vapes. Obviously during COVID there were loads and loads of masks that ended up in the sea, which I just found incredible, that literally within months, or maybe not even months, within weeks of everyone having to wear face masks, they were in the sea already. But there's a whole range of objects that we find on the beach. A lot of novelties and toys from seaside shops and people who are visiting. And then there's lots of stuff which I think originally came from ships and boats, where they used to just discharge their waste into the sea many years ago. So it's a huge archive of cultural objects from hundreds of years, literally. It is like I say, contemporary archaeology. So the process of creating an artwork, usually, there's a whole process which is the collecting and the sorting process, and yet stuff is collected on the beach, and it's only me that collects it, and I have to touch each object. It's not, I'm not interested in other people collecting and giving me things. These objects have to become part of my history. I have to become part of their history. The process of sorting is a much longer process, a process that I try and put off quite often because of my colour blindness. It's easy enough, obviously, to separate plastic soldier out of a box of plastic, and spoons and beachside cutlery and bottle caps and stuff like that. It's easy to separate those things out if you want to. But when you've got a huge amount of bits of plastic which you can't recognise, and the only way to sort of put them together as a type is by colour. And so the sorting process is really difficult for me, because unlike people who aren't colourblind, I presume, when they pick a piece of plastic up and they look at it, they know instantly what colour it is. But if I pick a piece of blue plastic up, quite often I will look at it and think, well, that could be blue, it could be grey, or it could be green, or it could be purple. I have no idea. So I have to be really sure that the object that I'm picking up is the colour that I think it is, to put it in a box which says blue or says red or says green, and so mistakes are made in as much as I get that process wrong, and a box full of red plastic will have brown and green and orange plastic in it, and a box of blue plastic will have grey and green and purple in it. And for many years my wife sorted those things out for me and took them out, but we decided that actually we should keep them in, because that was part of my personality and that was part of the artwork and part of my process, and that there's no reason why that should be taken, that shouldn't be revealed, if you like. And from that process, I always have a box of plastic which is my anomalies box, which is all the objects which I look at and I can't recognise the colour of them at all. And so artworks have been made just with those anomaly colours. And apparently the colour palette really works, but I have no idea. You can quite often tell when a piece of plastic, a plastic object is old, because it's of a higher quality plastic usually. It's like a hard plastic. And I have objects which were made in the 1960s or 50s, and there's nothing has happened to them. They're apart from sort of being worn by their surface being worn by the action of the environment and by the sand. Nothing's broken. They're really hard pieces of plastic. Manufacturers have been putting more plasticizers into objects, which extends the volume of plastic they can produce and makes it cheaper for them. And those plasticizers isn't so hard and degrades much quicker. I mean, that's not a good thing, because it's basically becoming confetti, and then it becomes microplastics, and it becomes nanoplastics a lot quicker. Now that the research is that there's nanoplastics and microplastics found in all living organisms all over the world. So more plasticizers are great for the plastic manufacturers and oil companies, but they're not great for everybody else. This film of plankton, with colourful bits of plastic inside it, because the plankton is obviously microscopic, and then the nanoplastics or microplastics are, absolutely minuscule. I mean, if they found nanoplastics and microplastics in the atmosphere, which they have done, then that's how small those pieces of plastic are. If they're floating in the atmosphere, in the clouds, then they're absolutely everywhere. There's nothing, no one who can escape that. No living creature can escape that, which is absolutely frightening. I can't understand, after so much information and so much research on plastic as a polluter of not only the environment but of our bodies and of living creatures' bodies, profit is more important than that. The plastic manufacturers have sought to increase their output after the awareness has been made really global. And it's almost like a reaction to that. Like, we better produce more now because we might not be able to in the future. That's how I feel now. I've got this stuff. I am using this stuff. I'm saying this stuff has integrity. It has a value, even though it is trash and a pollutant. Once I take it out of the beach and bring it to my studio, there is that kind of, the idea of alchemy happens, and now it becomes a transformative material. The process of collecting plastic on the beach is a different process, I think, for me, for other people, especially people who have what we could say normal colour vision. So quite often I recognise objects on the beach by their pattern and shape rather than their colour. The hard lines of a piece of plastic against the softness of the seaweed or of the stones or of the sand is the thing that sticks out to me more necessarily than the colour. And I do walk past red pieces, and I do walk past green pieces, and probably other colours as well, because I just don't see them. They're too mixed up in the seaweed and in the shells and everything, and have maybe similar colours to some of those things. Like blue pieces next to a mussel shell, I might not see that unless there is straight edges or there's some kind of mechanical part of it which means it's recognisable compared with the soft curves of organic forms. That is definitely something that is part of my personality and part of my process. But it doesn't hinder what I do at all. I've kind of learned to kind of be okay with that as part of my process. It was the thing that made me, to a certain extent, pushed me into being an artist from the very beginning, because up until I was 7 or 8, I wanted to be a pilot. Then I was, due to a homework incident at my primary school where I was told off for colouring in the landscape wrong, my parents took me to the opticians and I had my eyes tested, and I found out I was colourblind. And at that moment I was also told that I couldn't be a pilot if I was colourblind. Literally on that day when I was 8, I said, well, if I can't be a pilot, I'll be an artist. And that was it. And that's all I've ever strived to do. So it has shaped, my colourblindness has shaped my own personal history. you know, and also my perception and my understanding of how the world as we see it isn't the same. No, we are not experiencing the same world literally every second, you know. And to me that is amazing, wonderful, and fills me with that uncertainty which I'm interested in.